Hi friends, Rebecca here. I already tweeted about this on the Not Again Twitter page, but I wanted to clarify one more time that we knew this day would come. Alan and I simply couldn't find time to record an episode this week. Life is sometimes a little bit hectic with 2 kids, and I'm doing virtual teaching and he's just started a new job and blah, blah, blah. You know the excuses. So I thought I want to release something. And on top of that, I have this patrons only podcast that I want people to be able to hear because sample it before you buy it, basically, right? So I decided I am going to release the first episode of Bex II, the sequel, which is my patrons only podcast, for you to listen to today. Just think of it as a free sample. And if you like what you hear, I am going to make my patrons only podcast available to members of my Buy Me a Coffee page as well as the Patreon page. It is available to all patrons, even the $1 French fry level. And for Buy Me a Coffee, I like the membership thing because you get discounts on the other extras that I offer. And you can even get a super discounted yearly membership, and it's, pretty affordable. So I wanted to give people options, basically. The Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are both below in the description, but I'll say them real quick here, and then I'll stop advertising and just let you get to the show. It's short, too. It's about 10 minutes, so if you don't have a lot of listening time, this is perfect. For Patreon, you're going to want to go to patreon.com/potatolady. And if for Buy Me a Coffee, you're going to want to go to buymeacoffee.com/potatolady. The reason it's Potato Lady and not Again is because it's kind of my thing combined with Not Again's thing. I do podcast reviews on my Twitter at Bex II, and that's why. So I hope you enjoy. I'm about to talk about The Incredibles 2. I'm not going to edit out the part where I thank you for listening on my Patreon because you get it, right? Like I recorded this a long time ago and it's been on my Patreon forever. So I hope you enjoy. And Frozen will continue next week, possibly for 2 weeks. We have a lot to say about Frozen. We're very excited for it, and we appreciate your patience and understanding. That's it. Without further ado, here's Bex II, the sequel.
In a world overrun by poorly conceived cash grab sequels, one woman will take it upon herself to yell about them. This is Bex II, the sequel. Welcome to the first ever episode of Bex II, Electric Boogaloo. If you're listening to this right now, you're either listening to a headliner preview on social media, in which case, thank you, or you're one of my, or Not Again's, patrons, in which case, thank you. Today I'm going to yell about The Incredibles 2. For those who want to know what they're getting into, I'm going to start with Bex's 30-second breakdown. Think of it like a TLDR, but in the beginning. I hope you'll stick around for the longer portion where I dive deep into each point I make in the breakdown. 30 seconds on the clock, and here we go. The Incredibles 2. Violet was reduced to a shrieking stereotype. Dash's role was so inconsequential he might as well not have been in the movie. Way too much time was devoted to the seemingly unlimited powers of Baby Jack Jack, including an overly cartoony fight with a raccoon that destroyed the realism of the movie. The villain's villainous backstory was a phone, and the villain's true identity was easy to guess due to the lack of red herrings. The premise of the sequel completely undid the resolution of the first movie, rendering the entire first movie moot. The new supers that were introduced looked like caricatures and got no real personalities of their own. The decision to make the second movie follow immediately on the heels of the first was questionable, as well as the decision to focus mainly on Elastigirl. So, with that being said, let's get into a more thorough analysis. There's no particular order to these bullet points, it's just what came to my mind first, so keep that in mind as we start with point 1. Violet is a shrieking teen girl stereotype. She is seen freaking out over a boy, demonstrating insecurity about her relationship with him, and eating ice cream directly from the tub as a form of emotional comfort. While no teen girl is perfectly adjusted, the first movie ended showing Violet had grown as a person. She was more self-confident, more sure of herself, and less inclined to hide in the shadows. Jump forward to the sequel, and that's basically all gone. She's back to being insecure, she screams at her father, crushes hard on a boy. It's like they didn't actually know what to do with her arc, since it had already reached a pretty natural conclusion in the first movie. I was hoping to see so much more from Violet, and I was disappointed. Meanwhile, on to point 2. Dash has no role in the movie. He is a prop. He has tough math homework to do, and that serves to frustrate his father and amuse the audience with sick homework jokes. Other than that, he doesn't have motivation, struggles, growth, or a storyline all to himself. I maintain that not much would have changed if he hadn't been in the movie. Then there's the baby. Point 3. Jack Jack has every power imaginable, which means that there's no real threat to worry about because he will just magically transform into a solution for it.
Beyond that, the baby is the least interesting part of the movie. The choice to focus so much on him was annoying at best and disastrous at worst, especially when it came to the scene with the raccoon. The first movie absolutely had some cartoonish elements. Violet's boggle-eyed shriek in the RV in the third act, for example, was a little off for the general realistic tone of the movie. And when I say realistic, please know I mean realistic for what this movie claims is realistic, i.e. there are superpowered human beings. But they're still human beings. They operate within a set of rules, even if some people bend those rules figuratively and or literally. In the sequel, however, Jack has an entire fight with a sentient raccoon. Bringing sentient animals into the mix ruined it for me. This ceased to be a believable family drama and it became merely a cartoon. Not that I hate cartoons. I love cartoons, especially when they're done well. Miyazaki films, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the first few seasons of SpongeBob. But when you take a movie that has established certain elements of realism and then add a cartoony element, it breaks everything down. Everything about Jack was filler. My brother pointed out that it would have made more sense if they established that all super babies go through a cornucopia of powers in their early development before settling on one or two. But the choice the movie makers made was the easy way out. Don't decide on a power for Jack, give him all of them. Point 4. I just realized I'm not being funny. I'm going to try to work on that. Sorry. I thought I was going to be funny. Okay, point 5. The phone. The villain, who was so easy to guess because there were no red herrings, is a villain because her dad tried to call a superhero to save his life instead of going into a panic room. And that one superhero did not respond, even though he literally couldn't because the government had revoked his contract or whatever, which is a perfectly reasonable explanation for his absence. So now she hates all superheroes, but she should just hate her idiot dad. Why didn't he put the phones in the panic room? Why build a panic room if your first choice is going to be the ever-effective method of picking up a phone and having a quick chat with your hero of choice? Imagine if Lois Lane did that every time she was in trouble. So, that would be every Tuesday and Saturday for her. Villains are chasing her. Instead of running, she picks up a phone. Hey, sweetie, it's me. I need rescuing again. Where am I? Let's see. I'm on the 14th floor of... I've just been thrown out a window. Hope you make it. Bye! And at the end, during her monologue, the villain, I keep calling her that because I forgot her name and I do not care to look it up, is spewing all this ire and vitriol. And I just didn't believe it. Not for a second. I mean, she was also right, as Syndrome was right, that supers probably shouldn't have felt entitled to special treatment and an above-the-law status simply because they were born super. Think about the implications of that for a second. I was born better than normal humans, so treat me better. Eesh. Point 6. As for the red herrings, I will say I thought both the brother and sister were going to turn out to be evil. I thought they made the sister blatantly evil in order to... Okay, this is getting confusing because it sounds like I'm talking about Violet and Dash. I will look up their names. I vowed never to watch this movie a second time, so to IMDb. Okay, so I thought they made Evelyn blatantly evil, so the real twist would be when her brother Winston, who appears all nice and cuddly, would end up being in on it with her. Turns out that my thinking was more complex than the actual resolution of the film. That's not a compliment to my super amazing complex brain, by the way. I am very bad at figuring out plots. This is an insult to the movie makers. I am the easiest person to fool, and they did not fool me. Evelyn was just blatantly evil, and no attempt was made to obfuscate that beyond creating some nameless third-party villain who is very obviously not the culprit. It's the Wonder Woman problem. The villain is never the person the hero immediately suspects, so cross them off the list. Who's left over when the initial suspect is gone? Whoever it is, Evelyn, Professor Lupin, whatever. They're the villain. Okay, so this is point 7, but it probably should have been first. The first movie ended with supers regaining their ability to super. Super's gonna soup? I apologize. So they finally get back their lives, and then the second movie comes around and is like, actually no, never mind, scratch that. You don't get to be supers, so now you can fight to gain the right to be supers again. Point 8 is just to point out that the Underminer shows up in the beginning and they never catch him. So he's still out there with his big old drill just wreaking havoc unchecked. I think I'm right about this. Get at me if I'm wrong. Did I miss an after-credit scene? Next, 9. The new supers. I remember one of them had ridiculously wide shoulders, and then another one had the portal gun from Portal, but in her hands as powers. They used that one a bit, and it was interesting, but it doesn't mean I remember her or any of the other supers who got hypnotized to give Violet, Dash, and Jack the Omnipotent something to do while Elastigirl finished with the real plot. I don't even remember any of their names. Not that that means much, since I also didn't remember the villain's name. Speaking of Elastigirl, point 10. Pixar, is this you trying to do a female protagonist after you botched Brave so badly? I guess I appreciate the effort, except The Incredibles is an ensemble cast. I went into the theater to see a super family being a super family, working together, exploring the intricacies of their lives together as a unit, facing a new villain that has emerged to crush their happiness just as they think they are at the height of it. I mean, I honestly wanted them to jump forward in time, not set the sequel literally directly after the first, but by the time I entered the theater, I'd seen the trailers, so I knew they hadn't done that.
I still hope to see some super family stuff. Instead, they split them up into factions. Elastigirl on her own, the kids on their own, Jack on his own, Frozone with a bit part. It was just disjointed and clunky. Not to mention I hated that this was essentially a rehash of that old cliche where the mom goes to work and the dad tries and fails to successfully stay home with the kids. Can we please do away with the erroneous claim that men don't know how to parent? Men know how to parent. They can change diapers. Trust me. If you know someone who can't, that's an exception, not the norm. Gay male couples exist. Do you think they sit at home with blenders blowing up and children wearing grocery bags instead of diapers? No, they parent. Because men can parent. We are not in the 1950s anymore. And yes, I know he's parenting super children, which brings its own set of challenges, but see previous point about focusing too much on the Swiss Army knife baby. Another problem with shifting the focus to Elastigirl is, well, I just don't like her that much. See, that's the gamble you take when you focus on one of your 5 main characters. You risk choosing the one that few people like. I did a poll on Twitter, and obviously the sample size wasn't enormous, but 36 responses is decent. If you're listening to this and you were one of those 36 responses, thank you. You helped. Out of those 36 responses, only 14% of people said their favorite character is Mr. Incredible or Elastigirl. Since Twitter only allows 4 poll options, I had to combine Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl into one. That means there's a chance some people chose that option because of Mr. Incredible, not Elastigirl, making her percentage even lower. Alan says they might have made the decision to focus on Elastigirl because the people who loved The Incredibles as kids are now all grown up, but that's not how it works. I don't hate the character of Elastigirl, but she wasn't my favorite. Violet was my favorite, and she still is, even though I'm all grown up now. With Violet's character being so thoroughly assassinated, I mean, her character traits and growth, not her physical body, I didn't have much to enjoy, and my brain just kept saying that the 2-part motorcycle wouldn't work. But that's just me. Some people loved the Elastigirl focus. Some people probably suspended their disbelief very easily about the motorcycle. This is all subjective. End rant. Want a TLDR? Rewind back to the beginning. I'll see you next time, Spuddies. Potato Lady out.